Welcome back to another TouchDesigner tutorial. Today we are going to be displacing this image in 3D plane. We are going to build on our materials that we talked about in our last tutorial. And this time we are going to be using a point sprite. We're also going to be creating this UV ramp out of a ramp and a ramp and doing some reorder and using some noise and creating this desired effect of this image kind of tearing apart and falling on the ground. We're also going to use some chops to create some of this network and do a keyboard in and doing some instancing within this. So let's dive right in. So like we normally do, I am going to close this out, hit the X button, and I'm going to start by building with a base container. So I'm going to bring in my base, I'm going to go inside my base, and I'm going to start our network as we do in most of these tutorials and build our little constant where we're going to set up some of our network so we kind of build forward from there. So I'm going to add a res here, res X, I'm going to do a res Y, I'm going to do an out Y or X, and I'm going to do an out Y. And this is just setting up the stage again if I needed to change some things for posting on like the Instagrams or different resolutions out the back end of this. So it kind of seems redundant, but there's a point to this to have two of them. And we can go through that in a later video or maybe in this video. So I'm going to also call this data. And I'm going to change this to black because everyone loves black. And now we're going to build out our network within our SOP. So in this, our SOP, we are going to do an add, and this is an add point. And for this, I'm going to turn my add points to on. I'm going to add a convert at the back of this. And in my convert, I'm going to convert instead of to polygons, I'm going to convert to particles per point. And my particle type, I'm going to do render as point sprites. So this is kind of setting up our network. I'm going to add a null at the end of this and then start with our typical geometry network. And in our geometry network, we have our geometry node, which means we need to have a camera, which then means we're going to add a render in here. And then for our material, again, building on the last tutorial, from our materials tab, I'm going to select point sprite. And then I'm going to drag this point sprite onto my geo and farm my material. The back end of this render network, do the same thing I typically do is I'm going to put it out here in case you want to expand this base into different tox files and blend it with other networks. And I'm going to insert a transform and just set my background alpha to 1. And I'm going to comp over the background color so I have this nice black color in the background. And again, you can change that to anything of your liking. And then in my resolutions here, I'm going to take my render, go to my common, I'm going to right click on here and hit view so I have this little box in the corner. And I'm going to drag this over on a resolution for X. I'm going to drag the 1080 to our resolution for Y. And that kind of set up the scene, right? So now we need to build our little UV map with ramps. So I'm going to take a ramp, going to add this ramp, and I am going to first change this to 32-bit float. I'm also going to take these same resolutions and drag this on the ramp. So I'm kind of resolution accurate with everything here. And in this ramp, I'm going to select ramp here. And there's a button where you can do the hue that saturates the value in the alpha or the RG and Bs. And I'm going to keep this like this so I can select my red because this is the value I want. And then I'm also going to add another ramp. And in this ramp, I am going to then just select the green. And then over my output right here, how it says composite over set resolution, operation multiply, I am going to select add. And then let's see, did I have everything here right? Yes, yes, yes. Oh, and then I'm going to switch this to vertical. And there you see. So now we created our little UV in space, right? So building upon that, I'm going to take this and just select it into a null. And I'm just going to call this UV. And then we are going to basically, this is where we can start to like build out like our positional data and where our things are going to sit in space, right? So out of here, I'm just going to add this null, and I'm going to kind of change this in a minute, but I'm just going to call this position. And this will set up kind of our instancing network. And then I'm going to add in our movie file in. And in our movie file in, I'm going to select the butterfly. So I used my personal image for my own branding, but we're going to just do this with the butterfly. And in the butterfly, I am then going to take this and put this to a null. And I'm going to name this null color. So now we have our position and we have our color. And once we go into the geo, now we go into instancing. We hit instance 1. We turn on instancing. We take our position. We drag it over our translate OP. And then we take our X and we take the R. We take the G. And we take the B. And you can see now our UV square is sitting in space, right? So this is the power now. If we go into instancing here, we take our color, drag our color over there, and we start to bring in these values. R, our G, and our B, and then we start to build off there, right? And then, so what we can do here, let's make sure we did our comment, 32-bit float to, and what do we have here? What is this saying? It's probably, my error is probably saying these, all APs must have the same instance and same length. Yes, okay, so in our movie in file, I'm gonna change this to custom resolution, and I'm gonna drag these values over here, and drag this value over here, and now you can see our butterfly is in space. So just like I said, resolution accurate, so how we're doing some things, right? And one of the things you can see in here is our geo is sitting in this space, which is really, I hate to do this, but I'm gonna open it up a little bit bigger here, but you can see it's sitting like on the plus value of 1 and plus value of 1 within 3D space on the Y and the X. And this is kind of where we can change this a little bit, right? So like how we position that in space. So I'm going to move this UV over, and I'm going to add a math in here. And let's see. Where's the math? It's probably under M, right? It is. And you can always type in that field. For some reason, I don't know what it is. I decide not to. There's no rhyme or reason. I guess I just like the pain of like going through and doing that. So I'm going to change this value here, 0 to 1, and I'm going to change this to -1. And you can see now it shifted it over space. And then I'm going to also change this one to -1. So now I'm sitting in my like direct camera view, which is looking right through the Z-axis and looking straight up. And I think this is just how I want to do this one. And you can do some different things in camera and do some different perspectives and some different things like that. But I'm just going to leave that for now. Okay, so now we have this. And this is where some of the fun is going to begin with our displacement. So we're going to kind of organize here a little bit because I'm going to take these, I'm going to push these up so I can build another network underneath this. And of course, I probably should not be so OCD there and continually to do this, but okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to slide this over and start to build our noise network, right? So this is a noise is going to be doing our displays here. So I'm going to find a noise, and in this noise, I'm going to add the noise. We're going to go to my comment 2 and do 32-bit float RGB. And in these values of the noise, I'm going to change a couple things here. So in the noise, I'm going to change this simple 3D GPU to a Perlin 3D GPU. And I'm going to look through my values. I have 1, 1, and I have a 2, 2.7. I have my exponent at 1. And I'm going to change this. This amplitude's fine at 0.5, but I'm also going to change this one to 0.65. And this is just, obviously I already built a tutorial, but this is just like where you're going to kind of like switch with some values and do some different things, right? And how you kind of do this. But also my noise is sitting in this space right here. And I want to kind of, in here, I'm going to do my resolution too. So I'm going to bring my resolution over here. So I'm in the same, again, resolutions. And in my resolution, or in my output here, my transform, I'm going to change this scale to, because this is kind of noise scattering everywhere at a value of 1, right? I'm going to change this to 0.1. And you can see now it has this like, it's scaled that differently. So the noise is pushing differently, and that's going to help with how we displace everything. Okay, so within that, after the back of the noise, I am going to then add a math. And let's see, there it is. Again, just always search. You would think that I would know, but I don't, whatever. And within the math values, this is again where we're going to change some different things, but I'm just going to leave this for now. And I'm just going to kind of build out the rest of the network. And a lot of this is kind of like finding different ways to do different things. But I'm going to do this. I'm going to add this into a null. And I'm going to just say this one's going to be my y-axis. And then since I already made this and copied it, I'm just going to actually add another noise, or here I can just copy this noise. And then I am going to, on the back end of this noise, I'm going to be adding a limit. And in my limit, you can see this limit type off. I'm going to do this to clamp. And I'm going to change my value of minimum value of 0 and maximum value of 1. Right? And then I'm going to put this into a null, and I'm going to say this is going to be my move, right? And this kind of helps like set the stage of this. And so in this noise, I have to adjust some things too. So in that noise, if I look back at my values, I'm going to change this one back to 1 because I don't want it displacing that way. And I'm going to go in this, and for my values, I'm going to have this, Perlin 3G or 3D GPU. I'm going to have my C, but I'm going to change my PureU to 0.45. I'm going to change my harmonics to 5. I'm going to leave this at 2, and I'm going to change these value, exponent value 1, amplitude value 1, and this is actually what's going to be driving some of our displacement chain, right? And a lot of this, again, just so when you're following on with these tutorials, this is experimentation. So this is me driving with some of these nodes and doing these different things and then coming up with how I'm adjusting it. So it's not just like where I'm just always like, oh yes, I know the exact value. But instead of me just searching around on this and bringing in all these values, I'm kind of like just showing you a little bit about what I do, right? So and then we're going to blend these two together. Right, and we're going to then add kind of our displace off the back of this. So we're going to do this. We're going to insert a displace, and we'll put this about right there. And then we're going to use the displace to drive the noise, right? So you can kind of see this value, this displace. This is kind of, and what I could do here is I'm going to change this to orange, right? So I know this is like my value leader here. In this displace, it's pushing our image, right? So it's creating that granular effect, but it's not doing what we want in terms of these different settings. So you have to kind of go in here. You don't have to do anything, but you're going to go in here and kind of change how the displace is operating. So I have the 0.5 as 0.5. I have a displace weight of 1, another displace plane of 1, and I'm going to change this to 0. And you can see now it is going up and down. So if I go back to this and I bring this back into, it's displacing for that effect, right? But it's also this offset value is really, it's only going to 0 to 1 here. And so I want to change that. I want to change that. So how do I do that? And those are some of the different things that you have to do, or you can do, or whatever. But I could sit there and go to -1 and you're going to see something, or I could go to 4 and you're going to see something. But I want to get these values in between, right? So going back here, we're going to set up like a little keyboard in, and it's going to affect our little chain here, right? So I'm going to go into chop, and I'm going to go into, let's see, keyboard in, and I'm going to set up a little network here. We'll just do it down here. And within this, I'm going to select these values and say, yes, this is fine for my keyboard in, but I want to use this as like a timer. So I'm going to use this timer. I'm going to take a select on the back end of this timer because I only want to select one value of it, and I want to select the timer fraction. And within the timer fraction, I'm going to then do a math, or after my select. And in this range, I'm going to change this to -1, and I'm going to change this to 4, right? And then I'm going to also do a limit, and this is just in case I want to adjust things down the road. This isn't 100% necessary, but this is just how I kind of function when I think if I want to change something here. And I'm just going to clamp this, and I'm going to keep this at, let's say -1, and I'm going to keep this to 4. And this is kind of like if I want to like reset the image per se. And then I'm going to change this to a null, or add a null. And in my null, I'm going to call this displace. So what I want to do here is every time I hit my keyboard in, the plus sign here, I want this to then kind of start this network. So I'm going to take this value, I'm going to drag it over here and do my chop reference. And when I hit 1, it's going to do my timer and go through this like slow type of push within this space, right? So it's going to run through the images here. And you can see how the value is going up and down, right? So I'm going to go into here. And now for my offset, I'm going to drag this value right here. And I'm going to put it right there. So once I hit the keyboard, you can see how this is like going into an effect, how it's coming out of effect, and we're getting some of this displacement. And then we have to, obviously it was going up and mine was going the other way. So this is where we have to go into some other things and then look at what we did and what values do we need to change. So this math is a big proponent here. In these ranges, in this value right here, I'm going to change this green value to 0 to 0 to 0. Let's see, what did it do? It didn't want to do it. 0. Okay. Now if I hit this button, it's still doing this similar thing, but it's like coming into our own. But we have to think about like, how is this going to be positioned in space? So now we have this network where we're displacing up in space, but this is not exactly what we're looking for, right? So what we want to do here is we want to go into our displace, and you can see again, this is just adjusting values here. I'm going to change this value to 0. So instead of 0.5, it's 0. And now it's going to give me this desired effect of what I was looking for first. And this is cool because this is going up. And this is the power of like where you want to do your positional. So in this math right here, if I hit multiply here, instead of 1, I can do -1. When I do -1, now it's giving that downward effect of like what we were shooting for. So this is great. And then if you always want to hit 1 and just keep doing this and keep doing this, but like in my effect, what I kind of started out with is like, we're going to do this and then we're going to pop it back to the original image. So what I can do here is I can add a switch, and then we're not always going to have to like wait or just because we have no image on the screen. And I'm going to take this movie in file right here. I'm going to drag it to the back of the switch. And this is again using some different how things are working and what's happening here. But see this little done button? And what I want to do is I want to take a select off that done. So anytime that it hits done from the timer, like the timer hits done, it's going to kind of like push back the switch to what the image was. So I'm going to go back into here and I'm going to do a select. I'm going to bring it here. I'm going to put it in here. And in here, I am going to go for channels names. I'm going to select done. And as you can see, when I press this, this is really going to trigger my switch. So when it hits done, and this is setting like your timer and your different values and how you want things to happen. And we could do this in multiple ways. If we could take some other values here and put a limit in here. So if we don't want it to always wait for the full length of the timer, we could set it back here to pick up some different numbers in this math, right? So, and I guess I can just explain this or just do this instead. So we'll just take this off of this value. Or no, we'll just keep it simple and we'll do it here. But you can add a logic chop in here, and otherwise that would kind of push this. But we'll just leave this as a timer. And then in this certain scenario, we can always adjust within your speed of your timer how fast you want it. So like if we go into here and we select 2, you can see that now it's moving a lot faster. It's running through this time. And we'll go through it that way, right? And then so in this switch, now I'm going to take this switch right here and this little index point. I'm just going to go here and bring this value over here. So you can see now we're chopped our value, right? So we're sitting there, we're looking, but you can see there's a couple different things going on here, right? So we're going to go back into our value, but now it's like totally fit a different way because it's switching over 2D versus our 3D space. So this is kind of where you can do some different things and do what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually add a fit within here. And this is how I'm going to kind of like keep the resolution slightly the same as we go through. So you're always kind of like starting at a certain point and then like ending at a certain point, right? So this is where in our fit, I can do the same thing here in my resolution. I'm going to drag these two values. So I'm being, the same, right? Because I'm refitting everything. And my fit, I'm going to do fit outside. And then this would be, roughly where I would kind of like scale some of these things and scale some of these values. And so it's really, you have to look at it and say, okay, what is the best way to do this? So you can kind of keep like looking at this and keep looking and I'm like, okay, I'm going to wait for this to end. And then I'm going to scale that. And then this is going to come over. But there's kind of another trick you can do, not like a trick per se, but it's also, if you bring like in a composite right here, and we put these two values over each other, right? And we do like a top. And if you see right here, and if I hit pause, so this way I'm pausing my timeline, which I never like to do, but I am doing it here. So I'm pausing my timeline and then I can go into this fit and I can start to like scale these points. So it's going to be the same as where I'm at here, right? And I just happen to do this and mess with the points before. So it's 0.483 for me and 0.861. And roughly, I believe this is going to be the same. And let's try it out. And you can always like readjust it. So this is going to stop this for now. And then we're going to probably do a supplement video with this where we're going to build an image player and kind of do some different adjustments and make some random images and things like that. But this is all for now. So we kind of created this little network. You have some options within the timer on your speed, how fast it's going to be going. You have some options. See, my number button never is wanting to work on this keyboard, but you have some different options in here. And so this is really all those different things. So thank you for tuning in. Looking forward to everybody's feedback on this, and we'll talk to you later.